ITS2111. We are taking a look tonight at how to compose your HTML5 pages out of your PowerPoint design. So this is probably one of the most difficult tasks that you're going to face in this class. But once you get through it, you'll have a much better understanding of HTML and an understanding in general of how to go from the design to the development stage. So what you're looking at in this PowerPoint here are my three options that I have for my website for Express Holiday Travel. So here you can see I have sort of a piratey ocean theme going on here, and I've got the same sample page with different navigation options and different banners. I'm going to select the middle banner tonight just to show you how to put everything together. So what you're going to do from your PowerPoint, if you're operating on a Windows PC, is just to use your screen capture, and you're going to paste this image into Microsoft Paint. This is not the professional way to create images, but it's a quick and easy method that works, and it'll still get you really professional quality images with a lot less effort. So from this design, I'm just going to size this to where I want it to be, because the other thing that's important to note here is whatever size you see it on the screen, that's the size the image is going to be created. And if you are dealing in PowerPoint and Paint, you're not going to have the option to resize. So let me expand this, go back to the slide I want, size it to where I want. And for a normal slide, if you look at this, about 70% is a good general benchmark. You can go larger than this, but you also want to consider people who are viewing this on smaller screens or on mobile phones. It's been an interesting trend in web design recently, because it used to be fitting the normal size screen that everyone used, which was getting up to the 1028 width, 1028 pixels width. But now that everyone's viewing these on mobile devices, and mobile is such an important consideration, everything's starting to shrink back down and consider that mobile. So we have an interesting dynamic where you have to consider the high definition for the regular screen viewing, and also the smaller resolution screens for your mobile devices. So we're going to split the difference here, and we are actually just going to do about a 70% on the PowerPoint slide that you can see right here. So I'm just going to hit my print screen button, which is going to be a little bit different on every computer. Then I'm going to go over to Paint, and I am going to paste this in. So the next step of this is really just rearranging my elements in the page. So here you can see I'm sliding this up, and then I'm going to make this smaller. This isn't actually shrinking the image, it's just shrinking my view of the canvas. So I want to tighten this up around that top banner, and that's what I'm going to create first. So now I can go back out to the 100%. And you can see if I zoom in more, it gets a really pixelated look to it. And this is because my resolution is fixed when I copy it out of PowerPoint. That's the downside of doing screen capture. So there's no scalability on this. You can really only display it at 100% of what you capture it as. That's the downside of using this method for creating images. But again, it's a quick and effective means to get pretty professional-looking images quickly. So I just have a little tiny bit of a white border around here, and that's fine. But what this is going to do is actually show up in my page. So whatever my background color is going to be, I want to make sure that that is the color behind the slide. So here I'm going to use a white page with these elements pasted on top of them, so this white border is going to be fine. But keep in mind that no matter what I do, that border is always going to be there. So there's always going to be that little gap between this element and anything that I place next to it. So here I'm going to do a quick save as. I'm going to save this as a JPEG. You always want to be sure that you're saving as either a JPEG or a PNG file. Both of those are widely used on the web and very successful. So you can use GIF images as well, but those are not as popular and not as well supported in terms of creation either. So I'm just going to call this banner.jpg, and I'm going to save this Here you can see I already have this image, so this is overwriting another image, but if you're saving this new, you wouldn't get that. Now that I have my banner, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint, make sure I'm at the same resolution, so here I am at 70% again. I'm going to hit print screen again, and I'm going to come back in here, create a new file, and this time I'm going to create my navigation. I'm just going to follow the same steps again and just shrink down my canvas view and then narrow in on this. Now here I'm going to deviate a little bit. So I can save my navigation image just like this and add links over top of my image in the web page if I need my text to look exactly like this. But I really don't, and I would actually prefer to have these text links as actual HTML code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my PowerPoint and I'm going to get rid of all of this text. So now I just have a blank canvas. So I'm going to recopy my screen, repaste it, and now I've just got this little blank window. And this is what I'm going to use for my navigation background. And then what I'm going to do is build that text on top of it in my actual page. So here we go. Once again, I'm going to save this as a JPEG. I'm going to call it nav. Okay, so now I'm looking at my PowerPoint, but I'm done with my image creation. And if you've got other images in there that you've put together or another element of this, like a bottom banner or whatever else, you can do the same process. Copy that into Paint and save it the same way I did before. But right now I want to look at how my page is actually divided, because this is where I'm going to create my layout in HTML. Now, the professional method for this is actually to use div tags for all of your different elements and position them with absolute positioning or relative positioning within the page. There's a shortcut to this when you're just getting started that I would recommend using, and you can always take it out later and go with the div tag. And that's actually to use an invisible table. So this is a very old school 1990s type method for creating a web page layout, but it will still work. And it's generally a good idea for beginners just getting started because it will help you visualize what you're creating and how you're laying out your page. So you can see we've got one top banner here, and then the navigation lines up with the content. And the element that I don't have included here is a disclaimer. We're going to add a disclaimer because whenever this is going out on the web, we want to make sure that everyone knows that this is a class project and that no actual travel is being offered. So we're not actually letting anyone go out and punch sharks or commandeer ships or go treasure hunting. I'm sure you can do that somewhere, but it's not going to be through this version of Express Holiday Travel. And that's what we want to make clear. So now I'm going to open up Dreamweaver. You can use Dreamweaver or Expression Web. The interface for both of them are very, very similar. So I'm just going to select a new page here, and I'm just going to choose blank HTML and create everything from scratch. So what I like to do is use the split view. The split view is going to give you the code on one side and an actual preview of the page on the other. So first things first, you always want to title your document. I'm going to call this Express Holiday Travel, and then make sure you save your document. Since this is my home page that I'm building, I'm going to save this as index.html. And there we go. My page is all set up. And you can see the title appears in the header, which is where you'd put your style definitions for cascading style sheets. And then the body is down here, which is where I'm going to put all of my content that I actually want to display in the browser. This piece over here is basically a direct path to the body, so it's just showing what's actually displayed. So I'm going to come up here and insert a table. You'll see this is actually all pre-set up because I've done this quite a number of times at this point. So we're going to have 3 rows. One's for the banner, one is for the navigation and content, and the other one's for our disclaimer. And I'm going to have 2 columns because I need to divide my navigation from my content. So I'm going to just click OK, and you'll see all of this is built over here. Now, your cell padding, cell spacing, and border values all need to be set to 0. And if you are working with ExpressionWeb and not Dreamweaver, you're going to see this information at the bottom left of your interface rather than at the bottom part of the screen. And you can customize the interface, so that's just sort of the default location for it. So because I'm using a table, I have to set everything up in table format. So the first thing I'm going to do is highlight both of these top cells, and I'm going to merge them together. So I'm going to select Table Merge Cells. And you can see over here that it added this call span, which basically says this table cell, this TD, which is your code for table data, which refers to a cell in your table, is going to span 2 columns. So as a temporary placeholder, I'm just going to type in here that that's my banner. This is going to be my navigation. This is going to be my content. And then I'm going to do the same merge here at the bottom. Say table merge cells. And this is going to be my disclaimer. So here I can shrink this down so I can see the whole table in one page. And then the first thing I'm going to do is actually just get rid of this banner and insert my image. So I'm going to add my banner that I just created. Now this alternate text is really important. So if you've got a browser for someone who's visually impaired or someone who has just turned off the image viewing in their browser, which is less and less common now, you can actually type in alternate text. This text will appear in place of the image. So you should make it descriptive of what the image contains. You can also add a reference to a long description, which would be a complete description of the image itself. But since this is just a placeholder banner, all we really need is the normal alternate text. Here, you can see my banner, and it's put in automatically at the size at which it was created. So it's got a width of 647 and a height of 107. And we don't want to center this because we actually want to be sure that everything lines up to the left side. And if the content spills a little bit past the banner, that's okay. I could also go back and create a banner that's larger and thinner so that it would actually cover that entire gap. But the reason that width is set is because I set a width of 1,000 pixels on my table. I can also shrink this down. So for instance, if I set it at 800, then it would shorten that distance there at the end. For the navigation, what's different about this is you're not actually going to insert the image. Here, instead, you're going to insert the different links that you are going to create in your page. And then you're going to put that image for the navigation behind those links. So I'm going to go to Insert Hyperlink, and my first text, and this is where your sitemap that you created in week 1 is really going to come into play. This link needs to be the file name that you selected for that particular file. So in this case, I'm going to use shark.html. Now this page doesn't exist, but it will. So I want to make sure that my links are all set up, and that's why it's really important to refer back to that sitemap that you created at the beginning so you have a clear idea of where these links are going to go. Then I'm just going to click OK. And then you can come either into your code and use a manual break tag, or you can press Shift-Enter to get below the line and add another break tag in that way. So then here I'm just going to go back and do the same thing I did before and insert hyperlink. And then this one's going to be command.html. and you can see my second link appears. Now, if you are coding manually, which you're welcome to do, you can see that this is the A tag. And A tag is actually for an anchor tag. And this href is actually referencing, it's a hyperreference to whatever you are linking to. This can be a document, it can be another page. In this case, we're using relative links, which means that we don't specify the protocol and the full mapping to the location. We're just saying that command.html, shark.html, those are all going to be in the same folder in which we're working. So we don't have to give that entire prefix. If you're linking outside of your site, then you want to make sure to use the full reference of the URL, because then you're reaching outside of your current domain. And you'll get used to this more and more as you experiment with web design. So I'm going to come back in here and insert my other two links. So this one's going to be treasure.html. And again, these should all reference back to that sitemap that you originally created. And then finally, this is the mandatory contact page. And you always want to make sure that you're spelling everything correctly when you do this. So for instance, I had a little typo in the name. A little typo means the server is not going to recognize where it's trying to reference. So you want to be sure that these file names are exact. So here you can see that I have all of my text in here. Now, what I'm going to do is wrap all of these in a divider tag, which is a div tag. And then I just need to locate where it all ends, which is going to be before this TD. And then I'm going to close my div tag. And you have to watch, if you saw right there, this became a closed TD tag, because Dreamweaver will automatically try to close whatever tag has been most recently opened. So it was trying to close that TD tag. Now I'm going to give this an ID equals nav. And all this is doing is naming that section of my page. And here you can see if your code shows up, then it means that you typically have a typo in your page. And it looks like that div did not take. So and there you can see the closed tag went away. So the div is in place now. And this div is actually how you section off your pages in modern web design. And this is actually the way professionals do web page creation. But you're welcome to use the table since you're just getting started with this, and use that in place of the divs. You can also do what I've done here and actually embed the div within your table. And then at the end, after you've gone through everything and made sure that you meet all the requirements of the assignment, you can take the table tags out and just leave the div tags in and position everything with cascading style sheets so that you have a better, more professionally designed page. But that's down the road. That's after you've met all the requirements of the assignment already. So what I'm going to do here is actually set styles for CSS. This is cascading style sheets. And this is what's really going to direct your page and how your page appears. So I can add a new tag element. And in this case, I'm going to choose the A tag, which is for my anchor tag. So this is going to reformat all of my links so that I can get that white non-underlined text that I had in my design into my document itself. So here I'm going to say font family. I'm going to select a nice sans serif font, which means without decorations. So the way the font family works in CSS is it tries the first font. If it's not installed, it'll try the second. And if it's not installed, it'll go to the third. and on down the line. Sans serif is the default sans serif font for whatever computer it's being viewed on. Because HTML relies on the user's machine to display, there's no guarantee that these fonts are installed. So you want to use something that's really generic. So if you want the newspaper type print or magazine type print, then you want Times New Roman. If you want a sans serif look, a little more modern, then you want to choose Arial. So this font family is a good choice. I'm going to choose 10-point font, which is the same as you would see in creating a Word document. And then I'm going to say text decoration none. And this is going to override the normal case where a hyperlink in your document is underlined. If you don't put this, you're always going to get an underline for any link that you have in your page. I'm also going to override the color and make it pure white. The default for any hyperlink is to have blue text in your document. So if you want to get rid of that, you have to redefine the A tag. Then I'm going to click Apply and then OK. You'll see that it looks like my fonts have all disappeared. So this time I'm going to create another class, and this is a class that we will manually invoke. So the A tag, we redefine that style for all A tags in the document. Here we're creating a class that we are going to manually invoke to set the background image that we defined for the navigation. So this one I'm going to call nav. And here I'm given the same options. But in this case, I want to choose background, and I'm going to browse to my nav and use this as my background. And then I'm also going to set background repeat, no repeat, which means that this image is going to paste in there in the background once, and it's not going to repeat again. So then I also want to come through here and find my width. And I just want to make sure so this is going to be a guess right now because I didn't size my navigation image. You can do that in Paint. You can actually, if you view it 100%, you can see the size of your image right here. So I have 164 by 126. So I'm going to give this a width of 164. Okay, and you can see that nothing happened because this isn't an automatic conversion. This is one that we have to click inside the div tag and then select Style. So here you can see that this actually did apply the style that we had intended, and we have a decent width. We just don't have the right height in place. So I'm going to go back to my nav, and I'm going to select Edit. And in border, or in box, I can set my height. So going back here, I'm going to set my height at 126. And now I want to set padding. This padding is what's going to push that text further down into that div space. So I'm going to try it with a padding of 5 pixels. Then I'm going to click Apply. And here I can see exactly what happens in my page. So 5 pixels isn't enough. We'll try 10. Still not quite enough. So we'll try 12. And you can also individually set the padding. So if you wanted it to appear a little more to the left or a little more to the right. I'm going to try it one more time with 16, and that centers it up pretty well. So then I'm going to click OK. And because I've got a div in here, as well as a TD, I'm going to slide this TD line back against the div. What that's going to do is move my content over so that my content's going to line up right underneath my banner, right beside my navigation. And actually, I'm going to edit this just to get my navigation a little bit tighter in there. So I'm going to take this down to 154. And you can just continue to play with this until you get something that works out really well. So this is probably, oh, that's actually right in line with what we need. So then you can change that TD in there as well. So here is where I set my TD width, and we can set it to be the same. TD, unlike div and some of the other ones, actually accepts the width and height parameter. You can also do this with CSS the same way we've done everything else. So as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and add a new class for the TD tag. What we're going to do here is just make sure that our text is aligned at the top and left. That way we don't have to worry about our content. So we're going to say vertical align is top and text align is left. I'm going to apply that, click OK, and you can see that everything lined up here the way it should. So this content is where you're going to put the actual content of your page. And don't forget to save often. As soon as you get something set up the way you want it to be set up, then go ahead and save it. So now I'm going to use this disclaimer box Now, one other important note is if you included any sound from freesound.org, they require that you reference it. So to do that, you would just say, sounds on this page are located at freesound.org. And you can actually turn this into a hyperlink and link it back to freesound.org. And I'll show you how to do that. So if I turn this into an absolute reference, then I'm just going to include this HTTP protocol. Now you'll notice that because I did that, it turned white because it's a link. So I'm going to set up a new class for my disclaimer. And I'm going to set my font size smaller because we want it to sort of fade away at the bottom. Font family, I'm going to choose the same thing. And I'm going to choose a color that's a little bit lighter. So it just fades out a little bit from the background. And I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to come in here and build a div tag around this. This ID just sets the div tag apart. So there's nothing spectacular or magic about that. It's just giving a name to it. So if you needed to refer to it, for instance, in JavaScript later on, you could do so. So here I'm going to select the class, disclaim. You'll see that everything sort of fades out. Now, what you don't see is the link. To get that to happen, come in here. And I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to call it link text. And you can name these anything you want. It's whatever's convenient and easy for you to understand and remember. So here, I'm going to set the color a little bit darker so that it stands out against the rest of that disclaimer. So I'm going to say OK, and I don't need to create a div tag here because I can just go right down to the A tag and apply this class. So I'm going to go within my A tag, And down here at the bottom, I can select link text. And there you see. And here I'm going to come in and edit so that my font size matches the 8-point font that I used. And there you go. That's the basic structure of your index.html page. And if you save this with this kind of setup, then you are all set for week 3. For week 3, you don't have to actually add your content. You just need to get your navigation set up. And then for week 4, we'll go ahead and get started on a preview of that. What I'm going to do is just clone this page. So I'm going to use save it as shark.html. And you'll see that I'm going to have most of these files that already exist because I'm overwriting what I've previously done. And all this is doing is just making copies. So you can see that these pages are all identical, and all I have to change is the actual content in here. So one thing to note, though, is you don't want to clone these pages until you're sure that your banner and navigation are all set up the way you want them to be. Otherwise, you're going to have to re-clone them to make any changes across all of your pages. And you want all of these to look the same because it gives your site a real identity, gives it some branding, so that you can see that as I move from page to page in this site, even if I change the content, the wrapper's all going to look the same. And that's one of the keys to a really professional appearance on your website. I can go up here and do a save all, and I have all of the changes to my pages saved. So now I can do the same process that I used from PowerPoint, or I can add in images or videos. If you are adding video, for instance, from trip films, then you can come in to your text of your page, highlight where you want to paste your video, and then just paste that directly in here. If you paste it over here, you're going to see the code itself. If you paste it inside of the code for the page, that's when you're going to really see that video appear. And Trip Films will set everything else up for you. So all you have to do is copy that embed code that you stored from week 2, paste it into your actual code in week 4, and your videos will be located inside of your page. So that's all for me, and I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been helpful to you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help at any time.